And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with another episode of Valiant Till the Last, my ongoing weekly series where I read every single Valiant Deluxe edition in as close to a sensible order as I can think of. And in so doing, I familiarise myself with the entire Valiant Comics universe, bit by bit. In today's episode, as promised, we are going to be looking at Exo Manowar Deluxe Edition Volume 4. This is us diving back into Exo Manowar after what perhaps perceptually might have felt like a bit of a break, but really hasn't been. I did Deluxe Edition 1, Deluxe Edition 2. Instead of Deluxe Edition 3, I did the Armor Hunter Deluxe Edition, which was a few weeks ago, and that included all of Deluxe Edition 3. And then I kind of diverged and I did Unity, Deluxe Edition 1, and then the random leftover uncollected issues of Unity as well in last week's episode. So, we're now back with Exo Manowar, and this sort of picks up straight after Armor Hunters, and therefore also after the first Deluxe Edition of Unity, and I guess it's parallel to the second Deluxe Edition of Unity, although that's not really relevant. So let's have a look at the build quality of the Deluxe. We've got the usual standard design, so we've got the top banner, side banner, Deluxe Edition 4. Decent picture here. Picture here is good. It's not as good, or at least to me, it's not as appealing as the cover of Deluxe Edition 2, which is just amazing. What we have here is Valiant, Exo Manowar, the usual spine, Deluxe Edition 4, creators here, still Robert Venditti, and then we have Doomed by Dead Hand, and the random picture and the blurb. The blurb is really cool, actually. It makes it sound really, really exciting. It doesn't quite give you, it doesn't in fact give you any spoilers. In fact, it's slightly misleading in a way that I read this, I got really excited for it, but I assumed it to be kind of a non sequitur storyline. In other words, one which was unrelated to any previous Exo Manowar story. But actually, as I read it, this Dead Hand storyline and all the storylines collected here in Deluxe Edition 4 is actually very much linked to all the issues we've read so far, which is cool. So let's crack open the dust jacket. We've got the usual blurb here, a bit longer than normal, but well written, which is nice. And then we have the creator blurb on the inside French flap here. Okay, so just closing that and getting that out of the way. We have the Deluxe Edition itself. So to start off with, we have silver blocking, Exo Manowar. We've seen this several times already. And then we also have the, here we are, we also have the spine. This is slightly weird, because the spine is slightly off-center, so it looks kind of stupid. I don't know why that is. Is that a printing defect just on mine, or is that for all the Volume 4s? Basically, if you have this raw on your shelf, it will look stupid. Which isn't good news, frankly. I don't know if this is a printing mistake on my side, rather on the side of the publisher for the particular print run I've got. But that is frustrating, and that looks stupid. Boo, hiss. Alright, and then we've got a nice clean back there. End leaves, standard black. Very, very simple, very, very plain. Build quality, as usual, exceptional. We've got a really nice glossy thick paper. We've got really strong binding. Let's have a look at the contents. My patented zooming in. So we have Enter Armorines, which is the first story arc. That's issue Exo Manowar 0. And then 30, 31, and 32. I should point out that Armorines is actually a Valiant series from the late 90s. And so I got quite excited when I saw this. I haven't read any of the 90s Valiant, but looking at this, I thought, oh, it's probably very much likely to be a callback to that series. Subsequent to that, we then have another arc, Dead Hand, which is issues 33 to 37, and then the Exo Manowar Valiant 25th Anniversary Special. And then the final arc of this is called Exodus, which is Exo Manowar 38 to 42, and then a short excerpt from the Free Comic Book Day 2015 Valiant 25th Anniversary Special, which I'll show you as we go through it. So, those are the contents. Let's get into it. So we have issue 0 here, which is really nice actually, because it goes back to when Arik, so the guy in the Manowar armour, is living in Dacia in the 5th century AD. I've got to be honest, I really like the way that they always go back to Arik's roots and his background and kind of his history and his upbringing, because I think it'd be very easy for a writer to start neglecting that and just focus on the modern day iteration of the character and the modern day experiences. Whereas what Robert Venditti does is he always goes back to the roots and the birth and the upbringing of the character, which is really important when you consider how formative something like that is for someone. especially someone like Arik. So I really, whilst I'm not normally into like, I don't want to say medieval because that's obviously horrifically historically inaccurate, but whilst I'm not normally into like swords and slashing and that sorts of stuff and just kind of like this, it works really well in the context of this as being further background for Exo Manowar, dude over here. Anyway, so this is issue 0, which is good. It's not an essential read. It doesn't provide any fundamental context that's necessary for any of the subsequent issues, but it is a nice deep dive into Arik's character. Then we have issue 30, which is when the Armorines arc starts. This is a decent arc. It's fun to read. It's self-contained. What I will say is that of all the arcs that I read, this is probably one of the weakest Exo Manowar arcs. It's utterly unrelated to everything else that's gone on. I mean, yeah, it mentions some Armor Hunter stuff, but ultimately, if you were not to read this, if these issues didn't exist, you basically wouldn't have noticed if you didn't read them. In addition, the main antagonist for this series, who is this guy here, is so the best way to put it. He's very 90s. He's very 90s comic booky. He's malicious for the sake of being malicious. He's a bit of a douche. He's incredibly shredded for like there's absolutely no need for this. Hang on, here we are. He looks like this. Like no CEO of a Fortune 500 company looks like this. This is ridiculous. This is how Batman's supposed to look. So I don't know, it just feels very much like a 90s caricatured idea of an evil CEO of an evil company doing evil things for evil reasons. It was fun, don't get me wrong, I enjoy my 90s comics, but that said, it's just like, yeah, okay, I could happily do without it. That said, I love the artwork, it's done really nicely. But yeah, this was probably fair to say quite unprepossessing. Hang on, here you are. This is a very rare horizontal splash image where you have to turn the page. Cool image. But again, part of a story which was, while it's not bad, definitely not bad at all, it also wasn't good. This is utterly forgettable. And like I say, a little bit 90s and a little bit retro. Anyway, so that is that. So next, Dead Hand. So this is the Dead Hand arc, and here we have the 6 issues that are collected here. So what is Dead Hand? Well, it's got a lot of interesting stuff. It's got flashbacks here of Arik kind of having a dream sequence of his past and so on. But anyway, my point is, it's Dead Hand is a good, interesting story. It's a little bit evocative in ways of some Green Lantern stories that I've read. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm not going to go into more detail on that. But what I would say is that it is it's really interesting. It's a good story. Whilst initially, when reading the blurb on the back of the deluxe edition, you would think, oh, this is a completely non sequitur, outside context, alien threat. Actually, when you read the story, you realise it links very closely into Armor Hunters and events of Armor Hunters and events around the Armor Hunters. So, yeah, cool splash page there of all these various different armors. So, yeah, it's a really good, really interesting story. I would highly recommend Dead Hand. I thought it was really well put together. It resolves itself a bit too quickly for my liking. I think it could have been a bit more epic. But that said, you know, I'm not gonna complain. It was definitely an enjoyable read. What else is going on? I don't want to give too many spoilers as I flick through, so I'll just kind of race right through here. It is overall a good story. And that's the end of it. Then we have the 25th anniversary special, Exo Manowar special, and in this, now this is interesting because this issue here, is the first time we see the origin of the Exo Manowar armor. Now, I don't know how canonical this story is. I personally quite like the story contained within it as a potential origin for the armor. But I don't know if it is the legit origin for the armor, but I do like it. And I am glad that they have actually touched upon it. It still leaves lots of questions unanswered that I would like to know more about. But nonetheless, that's a really good issue as an origin issue. It could kind of fit in anywhere in the series. It's very much standalone and self-contained. But that's what it is. Moving on, final arc, we have Exodus, which are these 5 issues here. So in terms of that, well, before the Exodus arc itself starts in earnest, we have a wedding issue. I'd say spoiler warning, but ultimately, if you look at the cover on Comixology or anything like that, it literally has the wedding of Arik and Sana, I want to say her name is. I think it is. Anyway, it was actually a good issue. I'm not really one for sappy wedding issues and things like that. I tend to tune out a little bit, but I really like the character of the woman that he marries. Sahana, yep, that's her name, and I just really like the relationship. It could do with a little bit more fleshing out from my point of view. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the interaction, the connection between them. But that said, yeah, look at the artwork on this, beautiful. That said, it's nice to see some personal growth of the character, and it was a decent, solid issue. Here you are, the Lady Sana. This is like a short, like post issue. Is it? Yeah, it has this weird one-shot page here, which I think is meant to be like a jokey skit on the idea of what happened if Manowar did a stag do, I guess. But it's terrible. It's not my sort of art, and it's kind of a stupid story. Then it has this story here, which is a very short 3 or 4 page story about the Lady Sana, and then it moves into some other bits and pieces. Oh, this is cool. It's a mashup between Owly and the Exo Manowar armor, which I thought was great. Really funny. Cool, so that's everything from the wedding issue. We then have actually Exo Manowar Exodus starting in earnest. This is a really interesting story. Well written, good art. Doesn't sort of pull any punches in terms of what happens in it and the events and the tension and so on. And it also reintroduces a major character and a major antagonist who we thought was dead from the first volume of Exo Manowar, but as it turns out is not. Yeah, Exodus is a really good story, definitely helps push the story on a lot, and ends on, whilst not quite a cliffhanger, it definitely ends on a point where I really want to see what happens next. And yeah, definitely is an open-ended story. Get me excited for Deluxe Edition 5. Then we have the Free Comic Book Day 2015 extract, which is just a few pages, because only a few pages of it related to Exo Manowar. It's this, and that. So it's literally just a 4-page excerpt from there. And that's the end of Exodus. That's the end of the Deluxe Edition. We then go into the gallery. Gallery is standard, to be honest. Usual thing, DVD style features, script, commentary, page breakdowns, some great black and white pencil artwork. But yeah, that was good. Okay. So what can I say? Exo Manowar Deluxe Edition 4. This was really enjoyable. As usual, each Deluxe Edition builds on the one prior to it and keeps on expanding the scope bit by bit. So for example, Deluxe Edition 1 was very much just the origin setting and very kind of stable, predictable origin of the character. 2 expanded on that in some really interesting ways. Deluxe Edition 3, which we skipped, was basically Armor Hunters, and the Armor Hunters event was great. It was like a global scale event, so definitely a notch up from stuff like Harbinger Wars and things like that. And now we're on Deluxe Edition 4, where we're going into kind of solar system wide and extra solar scale events. So really what we're seeing is an increase in tiering from here to here to here to here. So it's escalating in exactly the right sort of way and at a really sensible pace. So I'm enjoying this a great deal. Yeah, let me know what you thought if you guys read it. What is next in this series? Well, next week we'll be looking at Exo Manowar Deluxe Edition 5, which is the final deluxe edition of this particular series or volume of Exo Manowar, and we'll be covering that in next week's video. Until then, as always, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you then.
Alright, thanks for watching everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at @IamThomasJudge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.